The fireman gets the signal from the guard that the train is loaded and we're ready to go. The driver gently opens the regulator and we ease away from the platform on the next sector of our journey. Carrog is the next station we'll call at, and that will be in 6 minutes' time. Watch out for the nameplate on the signal box on the right as we leave. All is not as it seems, because although we are leaving Lllangollen station, the signal box is marked Barmouth South. Barmouth was the western terminus of this line before closure, and the signal box was dismantled and brought here. It was a fitting memorial to the line's terminus, since between 1993 and 1996, Lllangollen itself served as the terminus of the restored Lllangollen Railway. You can see we're running along the bank of the River Dee now. In Welsh, it's the Afon Dyfrdwy. The village we've just left is renowned for its connections with Owain Glyndŵr, the Baron of Llynddyfrdwy. In September 1400, he proclaimed himself Prince of Wales, an act of defiance and rebellion against English rule. His manor was close to the village, defended by a moat, but it was destroyed in 1403 by forces led by the English Prince of Wales Harry of Monmouth, who would go on to become Henry V. When Lllangollen station reopened in 1975, the 60 feet of track was symbolic. It displayed an intent, a determination on the part of the volunteers to reclaim the track bed from nature and return it to a living railway, which would have an economic impact on this part of Denbighshire. Progress required energy, goodwill, and of course money. But despite the numerous challenges along the way, progress was made. It took 10 years to reach Berwyn, but then the pace picked up. Deeside Halt came in 5 years, Llynddyfrdwy in another 3, and by 1996 the Lllangollen Railway was operating to Carrog. However, the final stretch from Carrog to Corwen East moved very slowly. The need to protect the river from any working played a part. The Dee is a site of special scientific interest along its entire length, and the challenges had to be considered. But eventually the railway reached a new terminus at Corwen East on the 22nd of October 2014. We're running on one of the 2 long straights of the railway. Well, let's be honest, there's a slight kink in this one, but compared with the twists and turns we've been used to since we left Lllangollen, it's a welcome opportunity to stretch the legs of 5199 along this 8/10 of a mile section. Carrog is about 3 minutes away, so while we're zipping along, let's take a look at what we can expect to see there. Carrog station is a fine example of what a restored railway station should look like. The population of the village at the time of the 1901 census was 192, almost exactly the same as Llynddyfrdwy. Yet the ticket sales for 1903 show that nearly 14,000 tickets were sold from the tiny community. The main station building is on the up platform along with the restored signal box. And although there's a substantial shelter on the downside, we'll be crossing over to use the upside platform as we enter the station. The positioning of the station in relation to the village is different from Llynddyfrdwy. It's on a curve just to the north of the A5, situated within a loop of the river. But the village is across the river, nestling on its northern bank. The station building is another testament not only to the original architects, but also to the skills and abilities of those who gave up so much of their time to bring this railway back to life. It was bought by a member of the Lllangollen Railway Trust after closure, and they deserve congratulations for the foresight they displayed in helping preserve such an attractive and important part of the line. The driver closes the regulator as the buildings of Carrog come into sight ahead on the left. In addition to the two platforms, there are also two goods sidings on the upside. There was space there for 45 wagons, and the figures for 1903 show that more than 1,300 tons of goods was received there. Just beyond the far end of the platforms is one of the few overbridges on the line and links the village with the A5. We passed through the points and entered the Carrog loop. The entry to the goods sidings appears to the right, and beyond is the beautifully restored signal box. The platforms at Carrog are pristine, and even in British Rail days the shrubs were kept well tended by the staff. There's a small gaggle of passengers with cameras awaiting us, along with the station master and his able assistant at the down end of the platform. And so we come to a stop at Carrog Station. The Lllangollen Railway arrived back here in 1996, and the end of the loop we can see ahead was important. It allowed the engine to run around to the back of the carriages for the return trip. However, on St David's Day 2015, the line was extended to Corwen East, a couple of miles further on, and we'll be setting off for there shortly to complete our journey from end to end. Only it doesn't quite stop there, because the loop here is still used for the runaround. So in an unusual operation, we'll reverse from Corwen East to allow the repositioning of the locomotive to take place here. We exit the loop at Carrog and enter the new section of line. The terrain ahead is subtly different, and we can look ahead to another 0.8 of a mile straight stretch of track to enjoy as we cut the locomotive loose. We're about 6 minutes from our destination, so let's take a little time to hear about a final important aspect of this railway which makes it so important. If you ask a cross-section of visitors to any heritage railway why they came, the majority will likely say it was to see a steam locomotive. These huge monsters have a romantic charm about them, and the sight, sound and smell harkens back to a bygone era of travel. But their complex pieces of machinery take a great deal of looking after, and whether mandated or by force of circumstance, they require overhaul on a regular basis. On the way out of Lllangollen, we passed by the spot where the people who understand and repair the locomotives work. Without them, the steam giants would eventually stop working. But as we heard earlier, they've moved beyond the task of maintenance to create new machines, and that takes a very special skill. One of their most special projects is dedicated to building a new Patriot-class locomotive, the Unknown Warrior. It's endorsed by the Royal British Legion and is intended to be complete for the centenary celebrations of Armistice Day in 2018. There were only 52 of these express passenger locomotives built for the London, Midland and Scottish Railway between 1930 and 1934. The last was withdrawn from service in 1965 and none remains in existence. But the design drawings are still available, and the proposal to recreate a Patriot put forward in 2007 led to the work which is being carried out today. If there's one comment that stands out about those who build and maintain the permanent way, it's that they can never have enough ballast. Well, it seems that you can. Somehow this pile has remained unused just short of the farm crossing. But it's unlikely to stay for long. A track uses between 600 and 1700 cubic yards of ballast per mile. And like everything else on a railway, it needs regular maintenance. There's something mysterious, perhaps even romantic, about ghost railway stations, with the knowledge that they once provided lifeblood to a community. We're about to pass the site of one in a moment. Bonham Halt was a very basic 70-foot long wooden platform just ahead on the left before the gate. It came into existence in the 1920s as the Great Western looked for ways of increasing business, an approach in contrast with more recent culture which tended to see stations closed to save money. The wooden platform was augmented by a small shelter and the obligatory station sign. And the shelter was the proud possessor of a light bulb, which the guards of appropriate trains were required to switch on and off as necessary. The halt closed in December 1964, and at that time there were just 2 trains a day stopping here, one in the morning, the other in the afternoon, which took 2 boys to and from the grammar school at Bala. We're accelerating now along this perfectly straight stretch of line, and by the time we reach the end of it, we'll almost be at our destination at Corwen East. It's worth remembering the huge amount of time, effort and money that's gone into recreating this section of the line. And the temporary terminus has more than a passing similarity to Bonham. It's a wooden platform, though this one is built on a scaffolding base. However, there's one vital piece of infrastructure that's currently missing from the halt, a passing loop. And that's necessary to prepare the train for the return to Lllangollen, so that the locomotive can run around the carriages and reattach at what is now the back of the train, before setting off for our starting point, tender first. The driver has shot the regulator and now we're coasting. The River Dee has rejoined us on the right, returning from another excursion around a loop in the landscape. It's fitting that when we reach the platform, it will be as close to us as it was back at Lllangollen station when we set off. A toot and whistle announces our approach, and as we round the shallow curve, the platform appears in sight. There are even some passengers there waiting for us, having walked the short distance from Corwen along the specially constructed pathway. The driver gently applies the brakes, and gradually 5199 loses her momentum and slows towards the end of the platform. We've reached what is for the moment the end of the line, but the houses across to the left show that Corwen is tantalizingly close. We come to a halt. For the moment, this is as far west as we can go. But it's not the end of our journey. That will only really be complete once we've run around the train at Carrog. The return is accomplished in a slightly unusual fashion. We can't reposition the locomotive, so the whole train will reverse to the Carrog platform with a lookout in what will become the leading carriage, communicating with the driver by radio. So let's shortcut the operation slightly and zip back up the line to Carrog so we can see the runaround.
Driver 2, we have a green from the guard.
Okay, disregard.
As if by magic, here we are back at Carrog, and the first job to do whilst the passengers disembark is to uncouple the locomotive.
We'll go.
Once that's done, we can move forward past the points before switching tracks and reversing down the length of the train. With a deft touch on the regulator, 5199 eases forward away from the carriages, passing under the overbridge towards the points ahead at the end of the loop. On the right is a siding housing a pair of wagons and coaches. In the course of the next couple of minutes, while this maneuver is completed, the driver will be busier than he has been on the whole of the trip so far, using all of his skills to control the locomotive. The points change behind us once we pass through, and the locomotive comes to a halt in preparation for the reverse. With another toot on the whistle, we begin the journey back to the opposite end of the loop. Because of the access to the goods sidings at the up end of the platforms, the length of the loop is much greater at the eastern end, and there's a run of over 150 yards before we clear the points. The driver lets the signal box know we're clear of the loop so that the points can be changed, and he gently brings us to a halt. Then the regulator is opened once more to take us back to the up end of the platform and reconnect with the carriages. Shortly the train will be one again and ready for its departure from Carrog back to Lllangollen. But for us the journey is nearly over. Though as we head back for the platform, this is perhaps the moment the driver's nerves are put under most strain as he approaches the carriages looking for a clean and smooth reconnection in front of the waiting crowd. We've travelled aboard 5199 alongside the River Dee and through some spectacular countryside, making the journey from Lllangollen to Corwen East, back to Carrog in an unusual reversing manoeuvre, before running around the train for the return journey. We hope you've enjoyed your trip on the Lllangollen Railway and that you'll be inspired to visit and take the journey for yourself one day. Thanks for joining us for the ride.